So in this video, we're going to be covering the number one problem that I've noticed with using astrocartography to try to find our ideal place to live or even to visit for a little while. So one issue that keeps coming up repeatedly from the questions I receive via email, on social media, and also shows up in pretty much every single one of my one-on-one sessions that I do for people. And this issue, it keeps us from finding the ideal place, the real place that we want to be at a particular time. On the other hand, it can also make us get high hopes about a certain place. So we go out and sell everything, we buy a one-way ticket, we move there, and then have a completely terrible experience while we're there. So this video is going to cover this issue in some detail for you to really clarify this, because it comes up a lot, so that you don't make this mistake. And also, I'm going to share the solution to this problem, which is a little bit different than you're probably thinking. So be sure to stay tuned to the end, where I'm going to actually not only give you the solution, but I'm going to give you a way to implement it into your own life. And by implementing it into your own life, we're going to also tap into the solstice energy coming up to set your 2025 off to a wicked start using this technique, or anytime if you're watching this in the future as well. Okay, so maybe you've looked at your astrocartography chart and seen something like this, where all the lines converge on you. Don't go there, by the way. You'll go insane. I'm kidding, but there's a lot of energies there, and everybody's got that place in their charts. They get very curious about it, but that's not the real thing. That's just an aside. In all seriousness, the big problem is that we can get too attached to our so-called favorite lines. You know, these are the lines like Mr. Sun, Mrs. Moon, and Grandpa North Node. I have to admit, I did make a video that got a lot of views and a lot of attraction that talked about how awesome it was to live on my sun line. And that may have given the impression to everyone that everybody needs to live on their sun line to be fulfilled and find their spiritual home. And that is simply not true. Because what if your sun lines run through some remote location? Certainly you wouldn't want to move somewhere like this. You see, the problem is that when we are exploring our astrocartography chart with a fixed sense of which planets are best for us, we miss the certain planets or lines that might hold unique gold that is correct for us as individuals. See, perhaps Pluto and Chiron are actually great lines for us right now, and that's going to really provide a transformative fuel that is going to be very appreciated by us, and actually we're going to get a lot of fulfillment out of being in that place. And perhaps at this point in time, the sun line would be boring, and we just wouldn't be able to access its potential. Kind of like when I lived in Vancouver on my Sun IC line in my early 20s, I wasn't actually able to access the potential. I could see where I was, and I could see where I needed to be, but I couldn't quite bridge that gap at the time. I've done a lot of astrocartography readings in my life, and over 100 in the last 2 months alone. So I have some reliable stats to be sharing with you. And these stats might be a bit shocking. So about 30% of people who book sessions with me or have had readings with me actually thrive on their Pluto or their Chiron line. And it's usually because of a particular trait. See, most people think, oh, well, my sun line is going to be my best line. But that's not true. And in this case, some of the lines that are typically seen as maleficent, they're actually very beneficial lines for this type of individual. And this is people who their life work isn't just about sunshine and rainbows. And it's not just a life of meant to be out there enjoying themselves or always sort of focusing on the positive side. Their life work is actually about transmuting the shadows that are held in their ancestral genetics. I talk about this a lot on the channel and the importance of it. And I actually meet a lot of people who their life work, or a big part of what they're here to do, is actually to purify these unresolved themes in their genetics that actually have a benefit to their ancestors and their progeny as well. And so this is actually quite a large number of people out there, especially people who, they don't really feel like they're connected to their job or their work, or, they seem to be supported by other sources. They're generally given more time for the inward journey. And I see this a lot when I do trifecta readings. I see those gates that get activated, and they're very specific gates when they get activated, and I see them in the chart, especially gate 47. When I've seen that around Pluto, that's generally telling me, hey, like, you're here to do deep work. You're here to do deep work to alleviate the burden of ancestral trauma that's unresolved, that you're actually the one that's come here to process. So I can see that in the chart. And let me tell you, these people are not necessarily going to feel all the time. There can be exceptions to this rule, but generally what I've seen is that their sun line isn't where they want to be. And actually, when they're developing their medicine, it's better for them to be on their Chiron or their Pluto line, because they actually get to go in and they get to excavate and they get to start resolving these deeper seated issues that they've come here to do. So on a very fundamental level, it feels good for these people. Alternatively, I see some people who have come here this lifetime to learn. So perhaps their sun energy is just too comfortable and they find it a tad limiting. So instead, they might thrive on a Jupiter AC line or a Mercury AC line. They're really here to study, they're here to learn, they're here to adapt. And so for them, that's really where they're going to feel best. So the point here is that it does take a detailed reading to really get to know which lines are the most important for you as an individual. Not just in general, but also for right now in your life, what phase of life you're at, what kind of decisions that you're looking to make. So I always ask people, and I have you ask yourself when you're looking at your astrocartography chart, what do I need most right now? Because that's going to influence the planets that can give it to you at this time. And in order to come to this yourself, you really have to sit with your natal chart, your human design, like I've shown in my previous astrocartography video, and also your astrocartography chart. And you got to really sit there with an open mind and let your intuition, so you kind of prime it by looking at the charts, looking at the definitions. I've written a guide on the 64 gates, and you can just reference that to see what these themes are and use it as a diving board to stimulate your intuition to start telling you specific information about a particular place that you might need to know. And a lot of the time, I like to use this as a verification tool, because the solution that I've come here to show you today to this quandary of which line is right for me, and is it my sun line, is it my north node, the solution to that is something that I'm going to show you in a little bit. It's actually a technique that has nothing to do with astrology at all. It's a technique of sort of inward journeying. It's a way of working with the subconscious positively. We can call it quantum leaps or a quantum meditation, where you access that fabric of your blueprint to see where you need to go next. So it sounds a little bit out there, but I assure you, I've done this lots, and this is something that I did myself that was really, really helpful. I'll tell you a story in a bit on it. What I'm trying to say here, though, is you can sit with this chart and you can get your own intuitive details, or you can go to somebody who does astrocartography readings, like myself. If you ever wanted a reading, you can find out more in the description below. You go to somebody that you trust for an astrocartography reading, they give you a reading, and they use their intuition to guide you and support you in the right direction. So they help you make the decision for yourself. This is the important thing. I never want people to feel like they have to be trapped by what an astrologer told them. In fact, don't do that. Don't just blindly go with what somebody else tells you, because they have their own patterning, they have their own shadows and their own baggage that influences it, and what's right for them might not be right for you. So even when they're using their intuition is still influenced by their own biases. And so it's important that they come from a place of, I'm feeling this for you. What does that feel like to you? So allowing somebody to sit with that and see what's there, and basically using this as a guide or a prompt. This is what I often do with people in readings, is I start to explore these themes, and if anything's coming through that they need to hear, I tell them. But it's really about letting them come to the conclusion of what's right for them, and me sharing what I'm seeing or what I would, advise if I were them. I do give that kind of information so people can make their own informed decisions, and they can look into things more intently. So the other thing here that brings me into is astrocartography should not be used in isolation. It is one line of evidence that should be used in conjunction with a number of other things. So the environmental balance, for instance, the elemental balance is extremely important, because that's going to determine if you're comfortable in your environment. If you have the right balance of elements, you're much more likely to hit a higher frequency expression of the particular planet you're looking at, and not get, one of the unfortunate consequences. Every planet, their ability to provide an experience is on a spectrum. And so it's your own frequency meeting that spectrum of the planet that could be the difference between a really great experience or, a very, very difficult experience or a catastrophic experience. I'll give you an example here. Mars at a lower frequency range might be a lot of conflicts, a lot of fighting, a lot of resolved aggression. But at a higher frequency range, that Mars energy could be the initiatory force that gets you going, and you start overcoming challenges and overcoming hurdles, and you actually become quite heroic in your efforts to reinvent yourself. So you see these are the same planet, but different frequency expressions. And this frequency expression is going to be higher when you get your elemental balance. So this is a very important part. Also, too, the human design environment that is shown in my other video. So taking that into consideration, if you have mountains, you don't necessarily want to be in the prairies. You probably want to be somewhere with elevation. And if you are in the prairies, you want to find a hill, you want to find a high-rise building, or something where you can actually see from a higher vantage point. And finally, the last thing is just very practical. It's like, what places actually call to you? What places do you really feel drawn to? Like for me, I've got my Sun MC line running through hello Turkmenistan. I have no desire to go there, but if I was just going with astrocartography, I'm like, well, my Sun and Moon cross in Turkmenistan or Uzbekistan. Now I've got to go to Central Asia. Maybe there is something there for me, but I'm not drawn to move there. So therefore, I'm not really going to go and investigate it. So that's important too. It's like, what places are actually practical for you? What places can you travel? As it turns out, Turkmenistan doesn't allow many tourists. It's extremely difficult to get in, and it's extremely controlled. So it's not really a place that I would want to go, despite the chart suggesting otherwise. So that's important to consider as well. What's very practical for you to visit? What's very practical for you to live? What place is actually called to you? And I would say this actually leads into a much simpler explanation, because right now, if you take into all these things into consideration, it can get very complicated. Some people love it. Some people love the intellectual process of actually going through and being intuitive. It's very stimulating for the mind. I talk about these mentally stimulated embodiments where you work the mind specifically with a challenging item that requires creativity, and then the mind kind of short circuits itself and it opens up into epiphany. And so that's maybe where you want to work with the mind more, is actually you stimulate it and you give it lots of input from these different things that I talk about, your elemental balance, your right environment, different meanings and interpretations behind the lines. Sitting it with it will give you those epiphanies. It's a very beautiful, very blissful experience, and you also get deep insight into what's right for you. However, you don't have to do that, because there are a lot of variables involved, and maybe you don't want to go down the path of learning and trialing and erroring on your own. So yeah, you could book a session with a skilled astrocartographer, or you could do this thing that I'm about to tell you next. So before I tell you the thing, I want to tell you a little story so you have some context here, and I will explain the thing in the story. Basically, in Bali, I was in Bali in 2023, and I didn't know where I wanted to go after this. I just had a motorbike accident. I was injured and incapacitated, and honestly, it was a pretty low point in my life. And I basically said, well, I could look at my astrocartography, I can do this, there's so many options, and it's overwhelming. So instead, I met this woman named Claire Kipp. She's been doing this for 20 years. She really helps people to, tap into, it's like a form of quantum leaping. So it was another version of quantum leaping on my journey of sort of finding the best quantum leaping that I enjoyed. So we gathered at the pyramids of Chi, where I used to spend a lot of time in this beautiful pyramid in the jungles of Bali. And Claire would she had a circle of people, and you all would build like a little cozy nest, and you would go and you would do a particular meditation sequence. And in this meditation sequence, you let go of any preconceived notions, any ideas, and you just see what came up. And I saw the same place, and it was pretty much this place that I live in now, but there's also another place it showed me afterwards too that's even more amazing. It was in this location, and I had no desire to return to British Columbia or Canada at the time. I wasn't even in my mind, but I was very aware this is Vancouver Island. And so I said, that's crazy. And I really enjoyed it. And I really felt, okay, cool. Maybe it's symbolic. Maybe I am meant to take some of the elements of this experience and bring them into my everyday life here in Bali. Well, about a month and a half later, I repeated the process again. So I went back and I did the same journey, and Claire hosted it again. It was about 90 minutes long. And the second one, I got an even more detailed version of the first one. It was the same places, and it was the same theme. It was just there was more detail. So I took that very seriously. And I said, well, maybe I'm meant to go back to Vancouver Island, but I have no, way of really planning that. And I've got a bunch of other arrangements and obligations and stuff. So I'll just see how it pops up. Well, I didn't have to do much other than hold on to the vision, and I liked the feeling of the vision, so I tuned back into it a couple times over the next 6 months. And within 6 months, lo and behold, I got this place here on Vancouver Island, and I think I've shown you guys enough times, how stoked I am about it and what it looks like. But it looks pretty much like exactly some of the things I visualized, and not only that, but some of the things I'd seen before. So I've had a lot of deja vu moments in being here. And when I checked the astrocartography, it was perfect. Like it couldn't have been a better alignment with my Sun IC line. So you can see I used my intuitive capacities of journeying and voyaging and actually dreaming this place. And then I verified it. Now, when you do both things, your right brain and your left brain are both satisfied by that. So the logical side, the doubting side, it says, well, actually, I verified this. And it might be true. So then all of you starts to get on board. And when all of you gets on board with something, you actually start to create that potential in life. So I really feel like by combining the astrocartography with the quantum meditation that I did with Claire, and then later developed onto my own, I was able to basically make this shift happen very, very seamlessly. And with a lot of lock-in areas, like things were a lot cheaper, the trip was a lot smoother than I initially imagined. So it really felt like it was sort of like, this is meant to be. And I feel like this was literally something meant to be, not like I manifested some whim or some desire. Like I feel like this was me removing the obstacles between where I was now and where I needed to be next. And I think that's a much more powerful way to operate, instead of operating out of, oh, wouldn't this be cool? Maybe, this is just like a haphazard desire. It's actually, we're operating with what is the optimal thing for us at a given time. So if you want to try this approach yourself, I'm going to actually show you what I've done with this, because I use it a lot and I've actually adapted it into my own quantum leaping method, this same thing that's become more effective. So yes, basically the reason why I told you the story is because there's a part of you that knows where you need to be next and how you're meant to be living in that place, so the parameters around that. And this is an invitation to really make it happen. You could explore it 100% with astrocartography, but this way is actually working a lot more creatively. It's a lot more fun, and sometimes even more instantaneous, because you have the power inside of you to dream and to actually materialize that dream. And astrocartography is a great verification tool, but it should never trump your inner knowing. In fact, it should support your inner knowing. That's where things click, and that's where things happen alchemically. So if you want to try this approach out for yourself, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it during one of the most powerful. So now if you want to try this approach out for yourself, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it during one of the most powerful portals of the year, the solstice, which is December 20th and 21st. It'll be basically a special 2-day ceremony to launch into the new year. It's dream yourself into your ideal place for 2025 using this quantum meditation or quantum leap meditation, and also a special water manifestation ceremony, as the last video I published was on water. So this is really my own creation, using the shamanic basis, you could say, the basis of dreaming, that I've used over and over for myself, and I also use with my clients. Like, this is really from the main trifecta 3-month program that I ran. Instead of having to do a 3-month intensive, I'm going to show you sort of that part that really I find to be the most special and the most heartwarming and the most empowering for people. So this is a pay what you want event, because I want it to be as accessible for all. And basically, if this video has resonated with you today and you're like, yes, I'm eager to use my own inner knowing to find this place, this spiritual home in 2025, you should try out this technique. And that's why I made it pay what you want, so you can just give it a shot and try it out. It's easier for me to show it to you and to do it with you than it is to make a YouTube video that just explains it. And I will. And I can make an MP3 for sure. But I find with the added context, it does have a couple extra parameters. So I want to spend that time. And of course, there'll be replays available if you can't make those dates, if you have other commitments. But you just need a little bit of extra context. So it's best delivered in this 2-day arrangement. It's only going to be like 2.5 hours tops. So 1.5 hours each day. So 3 hours, total. So it's not super long, but I just want to give you some context for it, and also some safe parameters around voyaging, because it needs a little bit of explanation first to really get it. So do you feel like the collective energies want us to be in the right place for what's to come, whatever that is? And I will have another video before New Year's on the energy update for 2025, which is going to be a big one. That's why basically I'm called to offer this kind of special work at this time. And if you're interested in what I've been talking about in this video, you can find out more and register using the link in the description below. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will catch you again soon. I got some amazing content coming up, especially with the energy update for 2025. Take care.